Hey, what's up, guys? Um, Thank you so much for joining me. I'm just gonna go straight to the points. I'm gonna break down a couple of tips on what is necessary for you to know before you can be great or be good at pen drawing. Um, so you already know that mastering pen drawing requires practice, patience, and you have to have some deep knowledge of a couple of techniques. And I'm not promising that after you watch this 10-minute video, you would be able to do it. No. After you watch this video, it would require of you to be able to make a couple of practices. You need to practice to have it more like a muscle memory in order for you to be a master at pen drawing or to be able to improve eventually at this pen drawing skills. And first of all, starting off, you would need a pen as usual. And I normally like to use the Micron pen because it has different thickness. And I'm sure there's a lot of pen out there that you would have to use that has different thickness as well. You would need a paper, just the basic stuff. And mostly the technique that I normally like to use is line thickness and the controlling of the pen. You need to master how to use parallel lines, hatching, intersection lines, and shading, right? Also use different techniques to create light, high tones, highlight tones, mid tones, and shadows, right? You study the objects very well, or if you're drawing abstract, you need to have some knowledge on how light works, so you'll be able to identify which parts that you would have to put more strokes. And it doesn't really matter if you make a mistake, because making a mistake, it's permanent because you're drawing with a pen, so the mistakes will definitely be permanent. However, don't let that bother you. You should be able to convert these mistakes into a creative output or outlook, right? So you need to not to bother yourself too much about making a mistake when you're making a pen drawing art, because it's obvious. You would never have to have that perfect. That's the beauty of it. All right. You need to also experiment with different textures, right? To have a good rendering with the fur, the materials, and fabric. And in this drawing, as you can see, we're working on a lion, and the fur of this lion, is just pretty tiny spiky strokes. And when the areas are very dense, if it's a dense area, then I'll put in more strokes. And if it's let's say an overexposed surface of the fur, then I'll put lesser strokes in that area. So you have to keep that in mind. That is going to guide you. And also, you pay attention to composition before you start. In this image, you wouldn't see so much of the composition because I covered the whole space. However, in your pen drawing, make sure, because you don't have any second chances when you are drawing. So make sure you position the drawing in the center or in the thirds. Make sure you think out the positioning of this before you execute, right? And when you're drawing with pen, the more you draw, the better your confidence, the better you build your confidence. So try to avoid excessive sketching in pencil first. Mostly I like to use the pencil to do the outline, to have the basic proportion and the basic positioning and composition of the image before I start trace over it. Then I'll start adding my details, right? It's okay if you make mistakes, like I said earlier on. It doesn't really, don't make it bother you so much. I think composition and proportion is the most important of it all, right? And when you're drawing, make sure that you have used different thickness of your pen, right? Mostly I would use like a 01, an 01 pencil to trace over my outlines. Then as I gradually move over I use different phases, by the way. I sketch in different phases whenever I use a pen drawing. So from phase 1, I'll use 01. And as I go higher, I introduce in different pencils for the outlines, to thicken the outline, to pronounce the form properly, and to darken the shadows as I'm going on, right? And also you have to keep in mind that when you are drawing and constructing the shadows, you'd have to follow the outline, the contours of the shape of the path with the areas of which you are shading. So for example, if you're working on the tooth, for example, you follow the outlines, and you would mimic the outlines of the tooth. You will repeat those lines to produce the shading. If you go any other direction, which is contrary to the shape of which you are shading, it's going to make the image flat, and it wouldn't have that sort of 3D effect. So try to keep that in mind. And it's always best for you to have some references, right? You learn from people. Like there's this guy, his name is Franklin Booth. Franklin Booth is pretty good. You can look him up. There's one more artist that I like. His name is Rembrandt. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it properly. I'll put his name in the description. So if you're interested, you probably could check it out, and you could find him out, right? And try to practice daily, because the more you practice, the better you would become at anything. They say practice makes perfect, but that is not true. I believe that practice brings perfection. So if you're on stage 1 and you want to perfect your craft, you practice more and you get to stage 2. You practice more, you get to stage 5. Then you practice more, you get to stage 10. There's no roof to what one can do when it comes to like your abilities or sketching, right? So these are a couple of tips that I normally use in sketching to be able to pull something like this off, you know. And one more thing is you have to try to challenge yourself. Challenge yourself at attempt large-scale pen drawing for detailing. You know, you have to be able to blow the image out and put more details into it. If you draw too small, you will not be able to identify some of the details, right? So it's best to sometimes you draw in a large scale A3 or A2, and you can zoom in and put those details, and you challenge yourself to be able to do such things, right? And also you can work on your time, right, to improve your speed and accuracy. You just set like 10 minutes and see what you can produce. You set 20 minutes or an hour or 2 hours and see how best you can produce one work. Or you start one work, and if you don't finish it, you don't stop it, and you time yourself and you see how long it took you to complete something like that, right? And try different styles in abstract, comics, manga, realism, all with the pen art, right? So yes, that's all I have for you guys today. If you enjoy these kind of contents, kindly leave a like, leave me a message. If you have any questions, if I miss anything out, let me know your tips when you're using pen drawing. And I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, peace out.